We're super excited to have with us today. Is an associate professor at Levin College of Public Affairs, our sister college up at Cleveland State University. And so Tatyana is a unicorn in that she does public budgeting and finance, municipal finance, tax policy. That's sort of the hard thing to find in our field. I've been mentioning to some of our students. Lauren Jones does a bit of that, but it's kind of a unicorn that's able to really focus on that area, the management side. There's an association for public budgeting and finance that Tatyana is very active in and actually hosted the national conference, international conference, a couple weeks ago at Cleveland State University. She was the host for that conference. She has a book published. She has numerous journal articles published, and we're just super excited to have her. So I will turn it over to you, Tatyana.
Thank you, guys. I'm very excited to meet you all. Let me tell you right away, I am overcoming a cold or flu or whatever it was. It's been like 2 weeks, but I can hear. My ears are so stuffed and
yeah, we are.
Yeah, some of you hear it, and it's terrible. My ears are terrible. I can't hear, so I don't know if I'm screaming. Quiet. Yeah, I may cough every now and then. I don't think I'm contagious. I have cough candy here, so just please go with me. Well, as Dr. Malton said, I'm at Cleveland State, Levin College of Public Affairs and Education. I'm still wearing the name because we used to call Cleveland College, and they merged us with education so 2 years ago. So we're a different creature now. I'm still learning what we're called. Well, before I jump into my presentation, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my sort of couple of projects that I worked on recently. And looking
right behind you to the curve.
Maybe needs to be woken up. There you go.
Okay. Now it works. So this is the book I and my colleague from Chicago actually published just under 2 years ago. It is on municipal fiscal stress, bankruptcies, and other financial emergencies. So it is on what it means to be fiscally healthy and what deviations from fiscal health mean, right? One should be concerned about fiscal distress, right? And when it's not of concern. So the book, we talk about different measures of health, different measures of fiscal stress, fiscal emergency, bankruptcy. What does it mean for a city to be bankrupt, right? For a organization or for individuals, it's more clear, right? But the city cannot liquidate assets. So what does it mean that Detroit is bankrupt? So there are a lot of relevant discussions in this book, and the second half of the book is studies of cities that were in fiscal distress, different stages of fiscal distress, from very minor in Colorado Springs to County, Alabama. Bankruptcies, right? So there are case studies there. I'm very excited. This book was published almost years ago now. Now we work on a second book. Just signed the contract today. I'm so excited. And last year I was at NASPA. So we happened to meet with our publisher. We've been talking with exchanging emails for 6 years now. And I finally met him in person. We came to NASPA. So this is a book of case studies in public budgeting and finance. And I think it will be very interesting. And it will be very interesting, not only public budgeting and finance stories, but there's people out there. Because yes, of course, we're talking about very specific budgeting topics. There's studies, case studies, different tax issues, and specific budgetary issues, revenue generation, expenditure policy, but then also adequate cost analysis case study, or case study on internal controls and violations of internal controls. I'm very excited. We wrote several case studies. Very excited about that. Another big adventure that Stephanie mentioned. I don't know how I ever signed up for that, but the Association for Budgeting and Financial Management is a major professional association. And we have our annual conferences. This year's conference was important, and I was a local host for India. So we had 203 people over 2.5 days in my school. So this is the atrium to Golden School building. And we had 6 concurrent sessions at a time, 3 plenaries. We had multiple meetings, boards luncheon, couple receptions. And it was just a big craziness. Something goes wrong all the time. Somebody needs something all the time. I'm telling you, I'm not an event. So it was very different experience for me. There were lots of important people in attendance. So I don't know, it's kind of far if you can recognize. This is Kim Yornex. She's a director, budget director of the state of Ohio. She's the chief financial officer of the state. This is Mohammed Abnorma. He was a financial director, CFO for the city of Poland. In July, he moved to CAPS, so he's CFO for CAPS now. Carolyn Orko, here. She is a former congresswoman from Georgia in the United States Congress. This is us at one of the receptions. So this is my president, Florida State University, Laura Bloomberg. You may have heard the name. She was a provost before the university, and she was a dean of Humphrey School at the University of Minnesota. She was also a president of NASFA a couple years ago. And this is my dean next to her. Maybe you know John. He is the dean from the University of Nebraska, and he is incoming CASPA president. The first guy on this picture here is Levin. So our school, our college, Levin, this is the patriarch of the Levin family. So we had a lot of babies, and a lot of people in general. That was my big adventure. Okay. The topic that I promised to present here today. And it is budget and credit implications of these topics. So when I talked with Stephanie this summer, and I was telling her about my major directions of my work, and I was asking her what would be more interest. She said, this line of work, we're working together with my colleague from Clark, who's in the University of Oregon in Georgia. And most of us are public finance focused. Right? So Ben is doing a little bit of work with mental health clinics and stuff. I'm not doing any of this. So it is 2 public finance people trying to figure out crime and police things. So I'm looking forward to comments, feedback, and your insight knowledge, because I really just know only half of that, of the whole story, right? I don't know much about crime. Okay. Talk to you later about how to have it out to public finance. Crazy published on is very, very fresh and ready. There's a publication on crime credit ratings and publication just recent on recent municipal fatalities credit ratings. And in this latest report, we are looking at budgetary implications. I will mostly talk about the upper two bullet points here. They're very interrelated. Okay. Okay, these students here. What is the first thing you have to do in your research presentations, your research papers? You have to talk about the importance of it. And it's kind of easy to talk about this. It's a big problem. Right? It's, last year alone, over 1,300 people killed by police in the United States. And this year, so this is the most recent statistics for this year, 140 individuals just by between 2012 and 2016, who was responsible for about 50% of homicides. Think, 1,300 people for the entire United States. It's a huge country. It's not that much, right? It's not such a big problem. Well, if you compare ourselves to other developed countries, it is way. Are they constitute only 37% of the entire population, but they're almost 63% more likely. Teens. 21 times more likely to be killed by police than white teens. So now, again, we're not crime, we're not criminology specialists here. With our areas, especially in finance. So how's that? Well, I had this little conversation with students here. I was telling that before we started, no matter what you do in this life, it's all about money. It's all about topics, right? Every single topic that we study in this public policy space is related to finances. So, guess what? Police misconduct is very expensive. It costs a lot of money to the cities, to the counties, right? To local governments. Titles that flash and highlight the problem. Chicago has spent $500 million on police brutality. Cleveland and Washington Post, the New York Times, and just goes on. About 2010 and 2020, only by the largest 25 departments. Over $2.2 billion. And two maybe most biggest settlements are 27 million. Tatyana Guzman, 12 million. But a very long it's a very long example. Percentage of victims. For 80 about the settlements itself. Yes, it's a big ticketed item, settlement. But there are also costs of investigating, disciplining police officers, training, of firing these police officers, responsible for prosecuting this responsible police officers. So there are lots of other additional costs. And it is not clear who's paying these costs. Sometimes they're paid out of police department budgets. Sometimes they're paid out of general ledger. So the city's general ledger. And sometimes they're paid by insurance companies. Well, sometimes cities borrow money to pay for this. Well, the costs are not only to the public sector, there are societal costs. People are afraid, right? There is a distrust in police force, in police officers. There is a fear of retaliation. People just don't tell anyone when something happens. They don't talk, they don't provide information if they're asked. 2020, the Levin movement saw this riots and protests around the United States with broken windows. A lot of cost to the cities related to it. And so there are economic consequences and the loss of reputation. People don't want to come to the cities. That's where we use a lot of it. Lots of comparisons. There are also costs to victims themselves. So there's an losing their brand names. So families losing their brand names. They're losing parental support. So it's a lot of cost, personal level, on societal level, and a high cost. Now, what does literature say? Well, not that much, besides our paper. So now I want to talk about the specific articles. That's one that was just published. The second one is very, very raw and fresh. Again, I would appreciate a lot of feedback, especially on the raw. That is very fresh and new. So the first research question, and the major research question asked in our first article is, what are the credit implications for the cities from this? Just you guys. What are the credit ratings? Talking about not. It doesn't know anything about, never taught budgeting, doesn't know anything about budgeting and finances, so they're not participating. Are the credit ratings for you personally? What is a credit rating? What does it show? And you have your own credit ratings, do you? Yeah.
Worthiness of lending. Worthiness of lending.
Okay, worthiness of lending, absolutely. This is absolutely it, right? So this, and what do you think it is for the city, or for the state, or for the federal government? What credit ratings mean for them? It's basically the same thing, right? It's just not on an individual level, but on a city level, or a country level, or state level. So credit rating is attestation, right? About issuers' ability and willingness to issue that and pay that in full and on time. Right? The principal and the interest. So just like we individuals have 3 credit rating agencies that rate our individual credit worthiness. What are they?
Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion.
So, thank you. You're so good. So, entities corporations, they have their own credit rating agencies, right? And Moody's, Standard and Poor's, S&P. So these are three, there are also sort of property market. So there are three major credit rating agencies. Few smaller ones, but all ratings are published, are issued by these three giants. Moody's is by far the largest. They started in 1910, over 100 years ago on the page. Oh, sorry, then S&P isn't on page. Well, technically, Fitch was open early, but they were published. So if you receive high credit rating, certifies a high quality asset, and vice versa. Okay, so why do you think those multi-fatalities matter? I feel like I'm in the class. Lots of questions here for you. So why do you think credit ratings might be in any way related to police shootings? And we don't know much about credit ratings. But yes.
The agencies might view these incidents as an unsecured liability that's going to be something that the city can't hedge in terms of payments.
So they may be concerned about how much city can afford this, right? Very good. What else?
Could be an indicator of like mismanagement, quality of.
Okay, so it can be an indicator of mismanagement, right? I guess this is not adding to. Great statements. So let's see what various important people who are related to, who are responsible for credit ratings. Johnson Foundation investors are increasingly asking the racial equity questions if investors will pay attention to it. And I'll just go. So various statements. Credit rating agencies provide their rationale for changes in credit ratings. They talk about it. Now, next question. What do you think affects, which factors are important? Maybe for us individually first. What do you think makes you or increases your credit rating, your personal credit? Which factors?
Utilization
Of what?
your credit. So
Okay.
how much are you using of the total that?
Okay, so how much of credit you use? Very good, okay.
How quickly you pay off?
How quickly pay off, thank you. Yes, what else?
Types of credit that you're utilizing,
Okay, so
so installment
credit
versus
you have? Very
line.
good. Mhm. Yes. Incomes, how much money you make, right? How much add to the cost, right, to the- If you're a city, now imagine you're a city, or a state, or federal government, what do you think is important for your credit? Okay, how much money we have in reserves?
Is that not different for state and local government versus federal? Federal can borrow up to wazoo, right?
Our federal government is a different animal. We'll talk, I don't know if we have time to. Government is finances are very. Yes.
City's demographics, if it's a declining city, they might not have the tax revenue base to fund.
Okay, so some important factors here, right? Demographics, tax base. Very good.
performance on prior debt, if they've been delinquent.
Okay. So, that's a good yes. How they're paying off their debt obligations, absolutely. Anything else? Okay, so what you collectively propose here, I think I will put this in a few, I will sort of merge this in several categories, right? Well, first is fiscal factors, right? So yes, it is important how much tax revenue you're collecting versus how much tax revenue you're getting from the state government, federal government, right? So it is important how much you're spending. It's important how much debt we have. All these fiscal factors. So yes, you mentioned the state of the economy. This is the base. This is a tax base, right? So if you have a stable, healthy base, you can collect more in revenues. That's it. And some people are often looking at on a federal level, there's inflation. What the inflation rate? Unemployment rate, right? GDP growth. Factors like that. Very good demographics is, right? Are you losing population? What is the population density? And demographic factors are often embedded in other variables. A lot of these variables are sort of new models that are estimated in per capita terms. That's per capita, income per capita. And how well your seeds. And there is a lot of literature just cited myself. About this. But there's definitely a lot of literature that proves that recently. Okay, so this is from Moody's. Remember, Moody's is the largest credit rating agency. This is what they say is important. Stuff, economy, tax-based finances, management, debt redemption. So this is what researchers say, right? Us. And this is what the credit rating agency. But they typically look at our research, learn from our research. Okay. So before the first three factors that we just discussed. Fiscal, economic, and demographic. They're very straight and they're quite easy to measure, right? Per capita income or tax revenue or population density, direct measures for this construct, right? But in general, measure the versus better. Here we are in public affairs, public administrations. And no direct measures, right? And there is not a lot of literature on that. So there is a 2007 paper by Janice where they measured management and credit in the study of city school districts and credit ratings. They measured quality of management by college acceptance rates and student performance and standardized tests. Right, so this was their measure. And now I will articles that Ben and I wrote. At some point, you were asking me how you come up with PhD students, how do you come up with these topics, right? And I understand you so well. There were days when I was starting my PhD program, And I could not figure out, I knew what I liked to study, but every time I started Googling, oh my gosh, there are tons of papers reading on that topic. But how can what can I do? And where do I start? What do I do? How do I come up with an exciting research question that hasn't been studied before? Well, I really like to study this continent, right? So this is one of the topics I recently read that I'm really fascinated. And I knew from the literature that there's a lot of potential in studying sort of management, measuring management in credit rating. Because there is really not that much. So Ben was, he is working a lot on systems. So we're working with him on that paper where we try to proxy city management with 311 and smart city technologies. And I was like, well, it's such an unexplored topics. There should be other measures, right? Maybe we should dig and look for something else. So we sent a proposal to ABFM, right, where we said wanted to study credit ratings for the cities, and our contribution is that we're using a different measure of management, right? And back then, we tried to measure management with the quality of budget presentation. So I had a couple of graduate students collecting data from the budget documents, and I was doing a little bit of this. It turned out to be such a tremendous and extensive project. So 2 months before the conference, we're not even close. Okay. What are we doing now? There's no way we are going to collect this data. Yeah, I'm not even talking about it. And then I was like, came across the data set called crime. Maybe we should look at crime instead of quality of budget presentations, because the data is there. We just have to merge that data with our data. And when we started merging that, by the way, that was the only time where I sent one proposal and I presented a different sort of variation. So usually I try to stick with the topic I promised to present at conferences, but I thought it was better to present a new project than to present anything at all. So we started working with this crime data. Yeah. I told you in the beginning, I told you the story how I got involved with crime research, not knowing anything about crime, right? As well, because I had to deliver something for ABFM. And we started looking into policing data. And we had a few regressions here and there. And crime paper, we sort of moved on with the crime paper, presented it, and policing paper, you know, sort of set aside when 2020 came and BLM movement started. And we're talking on the phone with Ben, said, maybe we should revisit our policing of fatalities. It's such a hot topic now. And we already have the data and we're already working with that. So, yeah. So, okay. So that other paper on crime, first of all, on smart city technologies and 311 systems, we find a relationship between implementation of innovation and length of time in credit ratings. So yes, to have more technologies, more technologically advances in the cities, help cities with their credit quality. And crime paper, we find that we look at the difference between property crime and violent crime. Violent crimes seem to matter, and cities that have more violent crime usually rated more poorly by credit rating agencies. cities with higher property values. Not much difference. And also in that paper, we discuss how high level of expenditures on policing divert money away from other departments, right? From social services, from human resources, from creation. Now, in both these two policing projects, ours are our base data is the Institute Risk data set of 150 largest US cities. And we exclude Washington, D.C. It's fiscally very, very, right? So the city and the state and the county is all in itself. And we are looking at this years to 20. If you have questions, I feel interested. Yeah, if you have questions, if you have comments, feel free to interrupt. So FISC is our major data set, and data on fatalities comes from 8 only countries. And we use ABI unified crime reporting program, data on crime, etc. So there are 3 sources of data related to police involvement. The Washington Post collects a very comprehensive data on police involvement families from 2015. Mapping police violence, it merges both Washington Post data and data on Congress data. So it is probably the most comprehensive, but it only starts in 2013. So we ended up using data on Congress data because it is from has the largest time span. Major hypothesis that so we are looking at whether small fatalities have that credit impact. And if this relationship or this impact is long-term or more short-term. And we also look at non-white victims, right? Minorities, and have long-term impact with small fatalities that will bring this. Second model is several 5 labs, 5 time frames. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 years. Okay? What happens after the completion? Okay. And then we do the same, but only for non-white. And our dependent variable is 40 here, because we're doing risk credit ratings. Credit rating receives the sign from the top. The first one, down for every other notch in credit. This is an illustration of what credit ratings look like, right? And a comparison between 3 major credit rating agencies. So the highest credit rating is AAA. And so AAA, with all credit rating agencies, it is a collection of letters from A to C or D, right? And for Moody's, these letters are augmented by numbers. For Standard & Poor's and Fitch, the letters are augmented by plus and minus signs. But there is a sort of direct comparison between credit ratings. AAA, you have to sign number 10, all the way to triple B three, which is 1, and all non-investment grade credit ratings were, what are they called? Anybody knows? Non-investment grade bonds.
Junk.
So the junk bonds are sent. Okay, so this is the descriptive of helping here. Okay, you have to rush. You have to hurry, hurry. You can see that most cities, they have ratings between AA2 and AA3. So they're, well, it's larger cities that really like it, but it's still some cities zeros here. Chicago, at some point, Washington DC at some point. And some towns, they're Columbus, triple rated. I guess I have to. It's looking at the time. Okay, well, we're estimated water regressions. Okay, and I'll present the results as actual estimates of the water regressions, not in each sense. You have to run both regressions. Students here, right? So they're running cost ratios, they're estimating the cost ratios. And these are our results. So we can see that there are, so with odds ratios, remember 1 is no effect, right? Anything below 1 is negative effect, anything above 1 is positive effect. And the larger the difference between 1 and whatever you get, the larger the substantive impact is. So you can see that there are, so the cities that have more whistleblower fatalities, right? The odds of them receiving higher credit ratings are lower. By the factor of, well, in the first equation, 0.82. And we see that it is about the same sort of relationship over time. The first 2 years post the incident, we still see quite substantial and statistically significant relationship. Right? For the non-white fatalities, yes, there is also a negative relationship, but it is substantially smaller. And it is significantly reversed here. And all other variables seem to go out of the picture. That if so again, I'll come back to whatever results we do. So again, quite consistent results of the different model estimates. We see that there is a negative and quite substantial relationship between these multi-notice and credit ratings. And we see that this remains strong for a couple of years after the incident. And we try to do differences modeling because one of our reviewers said we need something more, physiologically interesting. So we try to do different things. I guess different results were maybe more interesting, but again, you don't really do different lifts with that because yes, there are some cities that never have those small fatalities, but there's a very popular nature of those small fatalities. So it's not once, it keeps happening over and over again. It's really not more. And we did find that cities that never have these small fatalities, they tend to have higher credit. Okay, so the second paper that we're just starting to work on is we're looking at budgetary implications of this. So we want to see where this end up in the budgets. So we're looking at the department expenditures, right? Because it's sort of more natural if This happens, probably departments are gonna be first foremost. And we look at overall safety spending and overall public safety, prisons and the sheriff's departments. Maybe more than we're looking at general administrative spendings. And it can be of the entire city, more than. Tax revenues, this is maybe a little bit less obvious because what they're thinking, it might be, this unrest, tensions, there might affect tax revenues, tax. And that, because sometimes these litigations are paid from bonds. Okay. Oh. This is expenditures and public safety expenditures. We see that, and this is not loss ratios anymore, it is direct regression, skipped. The cluster by city, so we know everything needs to be done, hopefully. So we see there is a recent effect from police involved fatalities on police departments and on public safety expenditures in general and administrative expenses models. So cities that have this police involved fatalities, they do tend to spend more on police departments, on public safety and in administrative expenditures. But we do not see an effect on tax revenues yet. Okay, so the first three of our hypotheses. Yes.
Do you have a second to talk about the Democratic mayor?
Sure.
Behind
Yeah.
that?
So it is, and I don't know what to say here. It looks like Democratic mayors spend more on police, on administration, right, on public safety. It's probably. So Democratic mayors are here and all others, Republican and independents. So we see quite consistent results. Each additional fatality per 100,000 residents increases police spending by about 3% after 1 year to 4.5% after 5 years. It's a public safety and spending by 3.5% the first year and up to 5%. By 1.5%. Now the question is, so what, right? And really, this is the most difficult question for me because, and this is where I need your help. Because yes, we see clear budgetary, see clear credit rating. I feel like the question is here, how can we make our things in that, right? So how can we reduce this police misconduct? And there is an organization called Campaign Zero at work. They sort of discuss and summarize research related to that. And there's summary of research, existing research on the top, and they find, for example, that body cameras do not seem to have it. But certain training does. Some decrease for very limited contracts. What is that? That's important here. That can help. Okay, I guess I'll stop here. I know I rushed through everything so quickly, not everything. Second. Yes.
When you link as a dependent credit rating, and then explain or suggest there's a correlation with the 311 whatever it is, and the link, what was the other one, between crime and credit rating, what you're actually investigating is a credit rating that is set by people, right? The credit rating is not something that lives autonomous from a value judgment by individuals.
Yes.
So should we not, should you investigate also how in the three credit rating agencies, a particular credit rating is established? Because I know it goes up and down. Is that not something that's worthy of investigation? That people go by perception? Because what you show, the 311 and the credit rating, that's just a correlation. There's nothing of an effect of the 311 thing and the high or low crime rate on, there is no direct effect to be measured. You merely notice a correlation. So is that something that's worthy of investigation? And you should talk with Russell Hassan. Because one issue with accountability is that police departments, at least here in Columbus, and I could imagine it be the case elsewhere as well, don't keep very good electronic records, if at all. And in Columbus, this is the case that they hardly do, of arrests and how these arrests have unfolded. Whereas they have an obligation to do that, they don't do it. In other words, very difficult to hold accountable. But so Russell Hassan here in the Glenn College, that will be something for you that might be used. I don't know, so should we investigate how credit ratings are set? Because it's all perception.
Yes, but it is a perception, right?
Well, there's nothing wrong that people perceive situations as
Yeah.
real, but it's real its consequences. I get that.
Yeah.
But
So it's an educated third-party opinion, right? And how this opinion is getting formed, well, as I mentioned at some point, yes, credit rating agencies at our fiscal situation, right, in the city. They look at our economic situation, demographic, and managerial, but management really,
No, but
you know, a lot about management is fiscal, economic, demographic, it is our ability to pay. But management is also, it is both ability and willingness to pay, right? So for the actual payment to happen, you have to have both willingness and all this politics, all this management stuff. And you can have the best city ever, right? Prosperous, but with that nothing, right? But then again, there, how can we say if how good?
for what it's worth, I have a nice quote from Bismarck.
Yeah.
With good civil servants and bad laws, you can govern. Bad law, with good laws and bad civil servants, you cannot.
Total, right? So these are just our attempts to measure
No.
management, approximate, not measure, by proxies, management, and are they good? Probably not. I was just reading a paper for review in Journal Sunday. They looked at different experience of public managers. It's something that is just one of them.
Thank you.
Could you go back to the prior slide just so we can look at that a little longer, please?
So look,
Thank you.
this one.
So it kind of builds on Yosa's question. So do we know how the Standard & Poor's and Moody are measuring management? Like, are you trying to come up with, this is a proxy for how they're measuring it, or maybe they actually are taking into account police violence in their ratings? Like, so do you think it's a direct effect, or do you think it's a proxy for something going on within the organization?
Yeah, so Moody's and S&Ps and Peaches and all these other agencies, they learn what to look for from our research, right? So practitioners look at academic research, I mean, their own research, and academic research to sort of form their opinions and their judgments. And it is sort of interrelated bond, right? Because we were looking at lots of their credit rating statements and rationale that goes with credit rating changes. Because doesn't actually look at, doesn't really. And in their rationale, they usually talk about, okay, this is the credit ratings that we assigned. And we assigned this credit rating because A, B, and C. And if situation goes better with pension plans or whatever, stadium funding in that city, from the stadium, whatever, then the credit rating can go down. And if a situation with parking meters and noise garage, whatever, is better than our judgment and change credit ratings. So we read a lot of these statements from credit rating agencies. And a lot of them, I showed a slide at some point, a lot of them were talking about, yes, this might be a concern, their settlements, lower the credit ratings.
Okay, yeah, so then it's a direct effect, yeah.
It is, yeah.
Okay. If it's.
Again, it's on off, right? It is that garage on the North Street or is important too, right? But yes, cities where, and credit rating agencies are explicitly concerned about the settlements. And things.
In terms of how the agencies come to these conclusions, right, the financial aspects and whatnot, you know, the city, of course, turns over those documents. But let's say the police involved fatalities. Are you aware, do they ask those questions? How do they tease out, let's say, potentially that managerial aspect of like, do they have research analysts at movies, right? And they just literally Google search Columbus police shootings and like how do you think that plays out in terms of that effect?
So credit rating is very interesting and sophisticated process. Right? So, cities have to submit, cities, states, school districts, counties, library district. When you apply for credit ratings, you pay money, right? You apply, and you have to submit certain information that credit rating is required at request of the city. So you have to provide this as a city, as a local government. But they also read.
Yeah.
They have lots of very educated analysts who know how to read newspapers.
So you think that plays a part, the analyst? Because I'm thinking, right, let's say the John Glenn College here, if we're going to hire someone, right, we might just Google search, right? Like it's an open source, you know, gap filler to some degree of just finding more out.
And the analysts, I mean, when it's your task, device, both from the revision of credit ratings, right? It is your task to learn as much as you can about it. Because it's an informed opinion, independent. It's happening, this government. Very interesting, I think.
All right, well, we are at time, so I don't want to hold everybody up, but she'll stick around for a minute or two in here afterwards if you want to chat, and just thank her very much for